Hello and welcome to this special broadcast coming to you from Davos. I have with me the Godrej Group's Adi Godrej. Mr. Godrej, I know you've just arrived in Davos, so I won't ask you for what you're picking up in terms of the mood here, but what are you hoping to focus on in the various business meetings that you have lined up through the course of the next
Well, I think the big thing is that the global economy is coming back on track.
Right.
US growth is being restored. Europe is also not doing too badly. And I think the next year should be better for developing countries than the last year, especially with elections in many countries, including ours.
Right. And I think that is, sort of the view that is being echoed by most of the business leaders I've been in conversation with, that this is going to be the year of a recovery. It may not be a sharp up move, but at least the decline has ended so far. Focusing on India, where do you think we stand in the macroeconomy today? The investment cycle hasn't still picked up. There were serious concerns about the consumption cycle. We seem to be making a lot of last quick dash moves to fix the fiscal deficit, but I'm not sure how successful they will be. What's your assessment of where we are?
Well, I think some of the things the government has done over the last 6 months is certainly good, especially the fiscal deficit containment and the current account deficit containment.
Right.
That will play out in better economic performance in the months to come. But the fact is that because of lack of investment over the last couple of years, growth has slowed down, consumption has also slowed down, and we will need to have a kickstart. And the best kickstart we can give to the economy, to my mind, is if the new government brings in the GST at an early date.
Yes, I know, and you've been a strong votary of the GST for many years now. Unfortunately, it has gotten delayed beyond expectation. Can you talk us through a little bit more about the consumption cycle? For instance, like you said, there were different forces playing out, the worry about inflation and therefore households cutting back on expenditure, and yet we had the expectation of the rural economy picking up because of improved growth in agriculture and a better harvest season. And the last numbers that we saw came in from Unilever just a few days ago, where they did much better in emerging markets, including in India, than was expected, which seems to indicate that the consumption cycle in India is looking better than expected.
Well, the fact is that the monsoon was very good. The agricultural season has been good. Just before the new crops started coming in, there was huge inflation, especially in vegetables,
Right.
which led to families trying to conserve expenditure on almost everything else.
Okay.
And I think that led to lower consumption.
Okay.
Now that vegetable prices have come down, inflation is coming down, the feel-good factor will improve, and the rural economy is clearly on the mend. So I expect consumption will also start picking up now.
So volume growth has been good?
Volume growth has not been good up to now, but I expect it will be good in the January-March quarter.
So this last quarter of this fiscal, and then improving thereafter into FY15.
Hopefully.
What's your position on the elections, sir? We're seeing different forces play out. Are you hopeful that we'll have a Narendra Modi-led BJP government come to power, or that it will be the return of the UPA?
Well, from all that I hear and from all that I see from polls, etc., it looks like the BJP and the NDA seem to be doing well. The Aam Aadmi Party created a bit of a stir when they won the Delhi elections, but then it's been up and down for them.
Right.
And I think the NDA might end up doing quite well in the coming election.
What is that going to mean for the economy and business policies?
I think they are business friendly, clearly. I think they are growth oriented. So if they do come into power, I think the economy will do well.
They had some wild plan of doing away with several taxes like excise, etc., and replacing it with some banking transaction tax. It was briefly discussed in the news for a few weeks, and now it seems, thanks to opposition from Yashwant Sinha and Arun Jaitley, they're no longer talking about it. But are you not concerned that any such big moves could in fact be destabilizing?
I think they might make some good moves on the fiscal front. I think fiscal stimuli is what we need. So cutting down on tax rates, we must remember in India, whenever we have reduced tax rates, we have collected more.
Yeah.
And that is what we should count on. Increasing tax rates in a developing country like ours does not end up collecting more taxes. Reducing tax rates encourages entrepreneurship, encourages business, and ends up with more collection. So moderate reductions in tax rates, which I expect an NDA government will do, I think will be very good for the economy.
So you are in fact hopeful on batting for an NDA government?
Well,
given that we've had 10 years of the UPA, maybe it's time for change?
It's not a question of being hopeful or batting for something, but it looks like that. If you look at the polls, if you look at the assessments experts make, it looks like they seem to be doing well.
In the run-up to the elections, we're seeing this curious phenomenon of competitive populism play out. Partially thanks to what the AAP government has been doing in Delhi, for instance, the power subsidies, the water subsidies. On the heels of that, the Maharashtra state government, decided to cut power tariffs. What is your assessment of what all of this is going to mean?
I think this kind of populist moves are never good in the long term. A couple of reasons. One is, how do you finance them? You get into deficits, which creates other problems, especially inflation. But more importantly, whenever a commodity is priced below its cost, it leads to overconsumption. It leads to wasteful consumption. And that is what we must avoid.
But Mr. Godrej, the Aam Aadmi Party's position is that we're not, it's not being priced below its cost. In fact, the costs are inflated by big business. And this is clearly an anti-big business stance, so to speak, at least by that party. And it may sort of rub off as we go closer to elections, because it's an attractive platform to, bring young, poor voters onto.
I'm not an expert on power and power costs.
Right.
But clearly, if business is overcharging, that shouldn't be the case. But I don't think that's the case. I think costs have gone up, fuel costs have gone up, infrastructure costs have gone up, delays have taken place, financing costs are very high, and power is very dependent on interest rates are very high in India. So all this has led to a great increase in costs of power generation.
So where do you think we'll end up in terms of, given the political background, in terms of GDP growth for India this year?
I think if all goes well and if the reform program can be taken forward, I think 14-15 could be quite a good year for GDP growth. And I think 15-16 is what we should look forward to, because by that time anything a new government does will have taken root. Right. And I think 8% plus in 15-16 is eminently doable.
And would you say that any recovery in the investment cycle will take place only after we have a new government in place, which means that any signs of that can only be at the end of this calendar year and the beginning of the next fiscal?
Yes, I think the investment cycle pickup may not be very rapid, but there are lots of other things you can do. Consumption cycle, as I mentioned, goods and services tax, which will immediately add 2 percentage points to GDP growth rate. Right. All that leads to many other advantages in the economy. So there are a lot of things you can do whilst the investment cycle waits to pick up.
All right. One final question. What are you looking forward to here in Davos over the course of the next 4 or 5 days? Any special sessions you've got on your list?
I think there are a lot of leaders, especially with countries which are changing dramatically. For example, the Iranian president is going to be here. I think Iran is going to be a good country to invest in future. It will get into the global mainstream. India has always had good relations with Iran. It's a large population. I'm looking forward to other major leaders such as the Japanese Prime Minister, etc., hear what their views are, because some of these leaders are making a big difference in the world today.
And a question on the Godrej Group of companies as well. I know we're in the middle of earnings season. I won't get very numbers specific, but can you give us a sense of what 2014 holds for some of the key companies in your group?
We think 2014-15 will be a good year for our group. It depends, of course, on the political dispensation. And I think if the political dispensation is good, we can take advantage of the growth that will come therefore.
Acquisitions?
Acquisitions we are continuing to do. Especially acquisitions in the developing countries.
Sure. So will that be Asia Pac, LATAM?
It's Asia, Africa and South America.
Anything already on your list to buy?
Well, we have done some acquisitions last year.
Yes.
We will announce some this year too. And I think it will be so next year too.
And on the property side of the business, are things looking better now, or the pressures that we saw continue over the second half of last year persist?
Whenever the economy does poorly, real estate doesn't do well.
Yeah.
People are a little shy of investing. Commercial demand obviously comes down. But as soon as an economy picks up, the demand starts again. So I expect 14-15 will be a good year for real estate development.
All right, Mr. Godrej, we appreciate you finding the time to speak with us. Have a good Davos.
Thank you
very
much.
much.
Good talking to you, Menaka.
Thank you very much.